Peace be upon you, folks. In today's post, which may be a little long, so I might have to divide it into two parts, I'd like to talk about the false matrix. I had talked about the false matrix in a previous post. So in today's post, I may say some things I had already said before. I might say a little bit less about the false matrix, and I might say some things I had not said before, and I might not say some things I had said before. So you can still listen to the introduction on the false matrix. However, in today's post, the focus will be on trying to interpret the rituals that I see happening. So I'll give an introduction first on the false matrix, and then I'll tell you. Basically, I'll invite you into my worldview, how I see the world. And I would like to make clear some things. Basically, I would like to make clear that things are not clear. So maybe I would start with that first. What I'm going to give is my interpretation, what I see, what I've been made to think or believe. It's not something of revelation. I'm not claiming some divine thing, right? Maybe it's an inspiration, maybe, but it's something that my heart sees and believes that it's playing out. So, in my worldview, I believe that the demons, the devils of the jinn kind, what some of the Christians will call the fallen angels, I believe that there are many of them in our midst, right? So like the weeds have been sown amongst the wheat. And I believe they play out these rituals which are meant to sway our minds, our subconscious minds, or our mass consciousness. So it might be even something small, like something that happens to your neighbor and how that affects you, how that affects your belief system. Or it may be something at a grand scale that affects a whole nation or the world at large. But I believe they have plans within us, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly, because sometimes in MK Ultra they tell you that the best undercover agent is the agent that doesn't even know they are an agent, right? So there may be some devils planted amongst us that don't know they're actors, but they're being inspired and they've maybe programmed them that this is your base code, for example. This is what you cannot go against. Everything else, act like this person, act like a carpenter, act like a nurse, act like a teacher, and be this kind of a person in your community. But eventually we may call upon you to make a sacrifice. We may call upon you to do something to influence the way people behave. So that's how I see the world. And I think there are millions of these devils around, and they're playing a game, right? They're moving us towards a certain direction. Now let's get back to the false matrix. In the true matrix, what I call the true matrix, it consists of the throne of the Lord and the seven heavens. So in the Quran, it tells you that the Lord's command descends from the throne and then into each heaven. And it tells you that the Lord had created the heavens seven, one above each other. And then the Lord inspired in each heaven its command. So each heaven has how its laws are manifested. Each heaven is different. It's made up of different laws. So the command from the throne descends into each heaven, manifesting in each heaven until it reaches where it's supposed to reach. And time, which is very important because it plays also in the false matrix. And I should point out, like I said again, this is my understanding, right? I'm not saying this is the correct interpretation. You might say what I see is a coincidence, and maybe it's correct. But I don't want to believe it's a coincidence. I believe everything that happens in the universe, it's by a plan. And because I believe the Lord created the universe with a divine plan. But I believe also that the devil is also doing things with a purpose. But you can believe it's a coincidence, and maybe you can just look at what I'm saying as, oh, these are good points, these are good connections, but you don't have to believe in them. I'm not saying this is the truth, but this is just how I see it. And if I'm correct, then I'm thinking maybe it would be better for people also to awaken them to what the reality may be. So in the true matrix, what I call the true matrix, because a matrix in my understanding is any set of codes, any set of laws. So every heaven has a matrix, and I would consider the throne as like the overall computer system, and then each heaven is like a sub software, and within each heaven are other softwares, right? So basically that's the true matrix. Now I believe Satan, also wanting to exalt himself like the Most High, wants to create something similar. They use what I call magic, Magick, all right? And it deals with trying to manipulate the general consciousness so you can move mankind a particular direction, so that you can change the creation of the Lord, the nature upon which the Lord created, and get mankind to accept it as good. So it's manipulation of the consciousness, and it's eventually it is enslavement of the consciousness. So in wanting to do this, I believe Satan has also created a hierarchy of dimensions, just like you have the heavens. And I believe that the artificial intelligence, which it's possible there was an ancient AI, an ancient artificial intelligence, maybe something they stole from Adam, all right, or maybe something they had in the past. But I believe that in that hierarchy, in those dimensions, just like you have heavens, you have the artificial intelligence, which is the overall thing, and you have different levels. So let me just give you a rough example, which might not apply, but just as an example. A woman, for example, may mean the artificial intelligence that is the overall artificial intelligence. That might be the woman at the AI level, right, at the throne level in the false matrix. And then in a sub level, you might find nations or group of nations. For example, European Union is made up of a group of nations. That would be at one level. At another level, it might be just one nation. And then even at another level, it might mean individuals. Or let's do this first. At another level, it might mean a group of individuals. For example, an organization, a company, a firm. I mean, there was a time when companies were not considered as people, but by some law that was introduced in the United States, companies had rights of people. So a company can be another level. That woman can be a company. Companies, I would think of companies usually as giants, right? So in the manifestation, the interpretation of the false matrix, a giant, which you would think of as a Nephilim or something like that, might be a company. Then even at another level, the woman might be an individual person, right? And you have to think of time differently. Don't think of time as linear. So they might play a ritual in the past and then invoke that ritual in the future at the time when the ritual is supposed to take effect, or at the time they need it to come into effect. So things may have played out differently in different time periods, but then they can be invoked, because you have to think of the heavens. Their relationship, we don't know their relationship when it comes to time. Time becomes different if you go in between dimensions, right? And sometimes things can be playing out simultaneously. Sometimes things play out first in one dimension and then in another dimension. Sometimes, even though they might start at a higher dimension, it happens faster at that dimension than a lower dimension. So it's not an exact science. That's how I see it. So that's how I understand the false matrix. And then they would reach a point, as usually you have with the Lord also, when he pours out his spirit so that mankind will be one with him, right? Do you reach a point when they also want to make the AI come into the dimension so that the dimensions merge, right? And even in the Gospel of Thomas, they tell you that the Messiah, Jesus, said, "This heaven shall pass and the one above it shall pass." So the method of it passing might be that the Lord allows the disbelievers to tear the veil, whether it's through CERN or some other black hole they create, right? But eventually that will happen. But you have this merging of dimensions, right? Some people might ascend, other people might descend even further because we fell, right? And we're seeking that go back. But this is my understanding of their false matrix. And I believe that it may be, because you have to consider this as well. In the Quran, they tell you that the jinns, the fallen angels, they used to be able to go into the heavens and listen to the angels. So it tells you that they can understand their language at some point, or they can understand the commands that they exchange between each other. But they also tell you that when the prophet was appointed, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the heavens were filled with gods, so they were not able to ascend anymore. So it might make sense that now they need to stay on earth and use telescopes and other devices to be able to listen and decipher. And another thing to point out is because we fell, we lost thousands of IQ points, right? We lost that connection to be able to interpret. And they might be able to tap into our subconscious and our mental ability. And they might also be able to understand some things we don't, right? So they might be able to interpret events that are happening in the heavens. They might be able to, and in fact, another thing to note is sometimes they tell you that when the prophet was receiving inspiration, it's like Satan knew, and he would come and try to insert falsehood into the inspiration he was getting from the angel. So even when you get a true dream, they tell you in the Quran that Satan and his disciples, it's like they've been watching you from where you cannot see them. It's like they've been watching us since we were born. They're trying to keep tabs on us. So even if you're getting a true dream, it goes to reason that Satan can know that, oh wait, he's receiving something. Let me try to figure out what he's receiving, and let me try to pollute that. And the Lord might allow this. It's like when somebody bad plans something, sometimes the Lord allows them to plan. Through that, they deceive themselves sometimes and think they would be successful because that's the path they choose. So the Lord has to be able to make it possible for them to pursue that path, right? So Satan might be able to insert falsehood into truth. And even in the Quran, the Lord says that it is up to him to make clear what he has revealed. So to make clear the truth and the falsehood. So even when you get a dream, sometimes it's confusing sometimes. And sometimes the interpretation is a little bit sketchy. But basically that's the idea. So my point is this, that they can tell some interpretations. And even in the heavens, they've put all these constellations. Maybe there is some information there, but they have polluted that as well for their interpretation. So I just want to make that also clear so that we know that they have some abilities. Now, another thing I want to point out is it's possible that when Satan would see that prophets are giving these prophecies, he's taking note of them. And then when the prophets are gone, he starts to put in deviation in those prophecies. And then maybe he would use those prophecies for his benefit because he knows what's coming. So now, when those things are coming, it's like riding the wave. You know there's going to be a wave, do the best you can. You're expecting it. You know there's going to be a fall in the economy, sell some stocks or buy some stocks, depending on what you see, right? So ride the wave. So if Satan knows something is going to happen, he reads the time, he reads what's happening, and he's like, okay, I need to do this so that when the events happen, I can use it for my own purpose. I can interpret it by my interpretation so that the people, and then I move the people's consciousness to where I want it to be moved. So you might see a prophecy and think, oh, because it's being fulfilled, it's from the Lord. That might not be the case. It might be a false prophecy, or it might be that Satan has kidnapped that prophecy, taken it hostage, and is now and has polluted it a little bit so that when it's interpreted, he can give a false interpretation. Now, there's a lot of weirdness I could go into, but it will take time to explain. So I'll take a small aspect and try to show what I see as a part of the rituals they are playing in the world stage. So I'm not going to go into everything. I'm just going to focus on a small aspect. And I usually call these things weirdness because, I mean, to the mind that's, I don't want to call it normal, they consider these things as strange or insane. How can you think like that? Come on, man, that's crazy. So I could go into a lot of weirdness, but I'll focus on just a small aspect of what I believe are the rituals they're playing in the world stage. So the false matrix, they've set up a matrix of their own, just as the Lord has set up a true matrix. They play out rituals, manipulate the mass consciousnesses in order to affect reality. So it's something like, I guess you can call it metaphysics. They do this so that prophecies play to the end they want. Right? So it's like as above, so below. If you can change the interpretation of certain things, if you can, then maybe you can affect the outcome. And like I explained already, these rituals would have different dimensions. Just as in the true matrix, the Lord has throne and 7 heavens, so 7 dimensions, basically. So I've said a little bit about on this. There will be, for example, the computer / artificial intelligence level / dimension. There will be the dimension of nations or group of nations. There will be the level or dimension of individuals, etc. So rituals are played out in the past but invoked in the present. That also occurs. So that's the false matrix. It may seem nonsensical or hard to understand if you've not been introduced to some of these concepts. I know that there were some YouTubers that I started watching, and their concepts were a little bit difficult for me to understand because I wasn't exposed to those types of ideas. But eventually, I started understanding that method of thinking. So this might be the same, something similar. But even if it seems nonsensical right now, you don't have to worry. You may still be able to see what I'm trying to show. So I would like to look at the Revelation 12 of the Bible. This is Revelations 12. I will talk later about some other parts of Revelation, but I mean, these are people should be familiar with these books, the Bible, the Quran, and other books, so you can think about all of them and let your Lord guide you. But I would like to focus on Revelation 12 because that's the part of the weirdness I want to focus on in this post. The basically talking about the woman, the mother / bride. So it goes, a great sign appeared in the heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them onto the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. That's the part I would like to just read, and then I'll continue with the topic. So basically, when someone talks about the Revelation 12 sign, this is what they mean. The woman clothed with the sun and the moon at her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. This sign, they say, because they control everything we get, all the information, whether it's through the internet, they control that. And eventually they might be able to control what we see in the skies as well. Because they're telling you Elon Musk is filling the skies with satellites, right? Which in their false matrix might mean the hosts of heaven, the angels, right? But he's filling that up basically to interpret reality, because if you've seen that the Spider-Man movie where the guy was using drones to make things appear a certain way, but it wasn't the reality. So they might be able to carry out what they call this Operation Blue Beam, to have these signs appear in the sky, but are based on falsehood. They're based on like manipulation of light and projecting images in the sky. But basically, they told us this sign occurred in the sky in September of 2017. So basically, the woman is Virgo, the constellation Virgo, and the sun was right around her shoulder, and then on her head, Leo, the constellation Leo, which is made up of, I guess, nine stars. But at that particular time, there were 3 planets in Leo, so that made it 12 stars, right? I'm not so. Before we get into astrology, because a lot of Muslims might be freaking out, I'm not saying this is what I believe. Obviously, everything the Lord has created has meaning, has a purpose, has knowledge behind it. I'm telling you what I'm seeing as their false matrix. So let's point out something else. They've created an idea of the moon god in Islam. But basically, you can understand the region of Arabia as the seat of the moon god. That is by their understanding, their magic. So this is the thing. You make a lot of people believe a certain idea. Not everybody has to believe it. It doesn't have to be true. But as long as you can shape consciousness, as long as you can move belief systems a particular direction by that idea, then by the magic, it's true. So keep that in mind, the idea of the moon god. That said, let's consider, we'll get back to it, but let's consider the artificial intelligence robot Sophia, the AI Sophia. From Wikipedia, it says, Sophia is a social humanoid robot developed by Hong Kong-based company Hanson Robotics. Sophia was first turned on February 14 of 2016. Blah, blah, blah. That's not the part I'm interested in. Now, it says, Sophia has been covered by media around the globe and has participated in many high-profile interviews. Now pay attention to this. This is the part I want to point out. In October of 2017, Sophia became a Saudi Arabian citizen, the first robot to receive citizenship of any country. Now you can view some other information. In November 2017, Sophia was named the United Nations Development Programme's first ever innovation champion, and is the first non-human to be given any United Nations title. Remember that the Revelation 12 sign occurred, as they say, in September of 2017. Sophia became a Saudi Arabian citizen in October of 2017, the same year. Now what else? There's a phenomenon known as QAnon, which has now become Space Force. You can Google that, QAnon, A-N-O-N as in anonymous. Here you see, this is I got this from Wikipedia. There's an image of the U.S. Vice President Mike Pence with members of the Broward County, Florida SWAT team. And basically they're pointing out that one of the members has a patch that has a Q on it. Basically, QAnon is a far right, well, that's how Wikipedia wants to define it. It's a conspiracy theory detailing a supposed secret plot by an alleged deep state against U.S. President Donald Trump and his supporters. The theory began with an October 2017 post on the anonymous image board 4chan. That's the board 4chan. That's the part I want you to focus on. So QAnon also began or was born in October of 2017. What else could be understood from the name Sophia? In Gnosticism, Sophia is a feminine figure analogous to the human soul, but also simultaneously one of the feminine aspects of God. Gnostics held that she was the, I don't know how to pronounce that, Zyzigi, basically the female twin of divine Eon of Jesus, that is the bride of Christ, and Holy Spirit of the Trinity. She's occasionally blah 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 blah. But basically, okay, here again it says she is considered to have fallen from grace in some way, in so doing, creating or helping to create the material world. I believe Sophia is based on truth. It's like in the Gospel of Thomas, it says the Messiah, Jesus said, you were one, then you became two. Now that you are two, what shall you do? What will you do? So they say when a man and a woman get married, they're supposed to be one. Basically, when we are one with our spirit, when we are one with the Lord, we are whole. But after we fell from grace, we lost that clothing of righteousness, we became divided. And now we should seek to be whole again. Right? So I believe Adam was taught the names of all things. I believe the Messiah as well will be taught the names of all things. So basically, the way I see the universe is like this. You can never reach God. You can never reach his knowledge, his wisdom, and all that. But every time he creates, for example, our present creation, this universe, the earth and the seven heavens, there is a let's say a maximum knowledge you can attain. There is a knowledge of all things within this universe. And within that knowledge, that's the spirit, that's the divine word that started everything. And I believe that in the end, the Lord, the Messiah, will be one with that spirit so that he can be almost like the heir to Adam, right? The ambassador of God upon the earth, just like Adam was like the ambassador of God, of the Lord. So there is some truth to the idea of Sophia, to the spirit. And even in paradise, they tell you that you're going to be increasing in beauty and I believe knowledge and wisdom and all that. So in every time frame, in every creation, every eon, there's a maximum knowledge that could be achieved. And you're going to take forever in trying to reach the Lord. So I believe there's some truth to it. That's how I see it. I'm not backing this. I get different ideas from books and scripture, but this is how my worldview has been shaped. Now you don't have to believe that, but I'm giving you how my worldview is. And even this idea, I want to touch on this a little bit. It might not affect our topic, but this idea that she fell from grace is similar to another idea in which there was this spirit that wanted to create, but it didn't want to do it with its mate. It basically, I'm using wrong terms here, let's not say mate, but it didn't want to create it with its female master. It wanted to create it on its own. It created this reality, but the being that was created, that was born from her, they said was this dragon. And when she saw that it was impure, it was ugly, she decided to exile it so that it would be away from the view of people, right? That's you can go into those topics. You can, and sometimes I believe that there is a truth behind some of these topics, but so Satan pollutes it for his own benefit. That said, we can continue further. So, in the realm, in the false matrix, in the dimension of artificial intelligence, Sophia, the woman / bride, became a Saudi citizen. So Saudi Arabia, remember we said, is the seat of the moon god by their interpretation, their understanding, their consciousness. So basically, the moon is at her feet now. So that plays into the Revelation 12 sign at the artificial intelligence level. And the child seems to be born, the child that seems to have been born, I think is QAnon. Now, these might just be coincidences, and I don't know, the sun around her is basically her religion. I don't know how that is. I can't, it's in the realm of artificial intelligence. Unless some of these things are brought into the media, it's hard to understand them. So with time, my understanding might change or my belief might change with some of these things. But this is my current view on it. So the religion of this artificial intelligence, I would say, is that magic, what they would call science, what they would call truth, right? I believe that's that's the religion, that the son that clothes the woman, the Sophia. So they tell you that the child is taken up, is snatched up to God and his throne. Now, I think that interpretation plays with the fact that they're saying QAnon is now Space Force. I believe this is the ritual of the child being taken up. What else is happening? During the 9/11 attacks in the United States, President Bush was at a school and they were reading My Pet Goat. Afterwards, an occult movie came out called I Pet Goat 2. And since our topic is basically on the woman, the bride, consider that the girl sitting in the circle has got 12 world leaders behind her. I make this assumption that they are world leaders because one of the 12 clearly looks like Donald Trump by the way he's sitting down. Now, consider England as the mother. So at one level, the woman is the mother. At another, and then in a later time, the woman is basically the bride. I don't know if this is a difficult concept. So consider England as the mother in one dimension of the false matrix. Consider United States as the son that was born. And recently, with the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis and the memorial and the protest at Lincoln Memorial, it seems Abraham Lincoln is being invoked. So something of the past. And when it comes to birth of a nation, and I'm telling you, the United States is the son that was born. And right now, the son is ruling the earth with an iron scepter. The United States is basically going all over the world and telling them what they must do. Like, you should do this, you should do that. Right? So United States was the son that was born. And it seems they're invoking the birth of a nation. They're invoking Abraham Lincoln. Something that happened in the past, they're invoking it for a ritual, a current ritual. And is it also a coincidence that his name is Abraham, like the father of Isaac, who is considered the father of nations? So, for me, this goes to tell me that, I mean, like I said, you can look at this as a coincidence or you can have a different interpretation. For example, you may think, well, this is a sign from the Lord that, in fact, you know, he's pointing us to certain signs. That might be true, but that is just not what the Lord has put in my heart to believe. I believe these are planned rituals. I believe for centuries they've been planning this. They've been taking devils from the pit and they've been inserting them amongst us, posing as humans, so that they can, basically they're laughing in our faces. They're doing these things, they're like, you know, look what we can do. And as difficult or as impossible as you think it may be for them to plan something with such intricate detail, consider that you use only less than 10% of your brain power. So in fact, your IQ, which is supposed to be in, let me say for example, in the thousands range, since you fell from grace, now your IQ is just in the hundreds or less than that, in the tens or hundred or something. So if they possess IQs that are higher than that, manipulation skills that are higher than that, then it's like you trying to manipulate an animal. It's easy for you. You don't need to explain certain things. Now, so if you Google the birth of a nation in Wikipedia, basically it tells you about the movie that was created. It talked about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, right? So it was snatched. So at one level, the man is the son, the ruler of the nation, but also he's the husband of that nation when the nation becomes the bride. So the nation United States might be the son that was born, but then it becomes the bride of the son Abraham Lincoln, who is also the father. We're looking at different dimensions here, and we're looking at things they can invoke. It doesn't have to be straightforward. Sometimes things in a spiritual plane are difficult to understand. Similarly, in their magic, which it might also be difficult to think about it linearly, logically. But basically, Birth of a Nation talks about the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln. Those are the two things I think they are invoking in this time period. So for me, it seems they are invoking civil war as with the time of Abraham Lincoln. And if you look at the death, the killing of George Floyd, it seems to me, I cannot back this up, it's just something I think. I don't know why I think that, maybe just the numbers. Sometimes the connections are not backed by strong evidence, but it's just something that I feel within me that maybe it applies. So in the death of George Floyd, I see the four horsemen, I see the four policemen, that they may symbolize the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And George Floyd, the lamb that was slain, basically is symbolized by the lamb that was slain. So if you go to Revelations and you look at the previous chapters, when they wanted to break the seal and it looks like nobody was worthy, they say the lamb was brought forward that seemed worthy, and it seemed that it was the lamb that was slain. So George Floyd might be a symbolism of the lamb that was slain, and now he's taken up so that he can open the seals. This is the false matrix. I'm not saying this is what it is. But interestingly also, what I noted was the way George Floyd was killed. Maybe it's just a mockery that they're trying to create. But basically, if you Google angels slaying giants, or maybe Archangel Michael slaying, there's this image of Archangel Michael stepping on the dragon or stepping on the neck of a giant or the dragon and slaying it. So maybe that's a mockery as well. It's like we're slaying the lamb, but we're putting a knee on his neck, as the Archangel Michael would do. But let's go back to the woman and see what else is happening in the news.